When I said Thanksgiving and thank you to the listeners, it's not just them. As all of you guys know behind the scenes that Jeff, I've told you guys, but thank you guys so much, because without you guys joining me, that's what makes this whole thing the whole thing. Otherwise, it's just me. It's just, there's all different parts of what we do, but all of us together makes this thing rock, man. So I just wanted to, say thank you to you as well, and all you guys that do the Sports Fix with me. And it helps make it what it is, hopefully, anyway.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate it. This is something I really look forward to doing on Tuesday and Friday, and it's just a good part of my whole broadcasting career, so to speak.
Well, I wasn't sharing credit. I was sharing blame. Everything that we do wrong, we all blame. No, none of us get credit, because, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just passing the blame. Anything that you guys like, it's because of me. Anything that you guys don't like, it's because of them. That's how we delineate things here on the sport. I'm just kidding, man. We are family. That was the whole reason I started with that. So let's talk about it. Speaking of, hey, this weekend, you heard me teasing and joking aside. How long has it been since either of these teams have been late season, speaking of the Browns and the Bills, looking for playoff potential and all of that? We know here in Cleveland, but this game itself, the last few times these teams have met, it meant the garbage bowl. It meant the, who's going to go watch the most boring game of the year in 3 feet of snow, because that's what these teams traditionally have had for most of the last few years. And then it gets the additional layer this year of not only do you have what happened last meeting between these teams and Brian Hoyer and how that changed the course of things, but you've got one coach who used to be on the other sideline and now he's across, and Buffalo's rather familiar with what kind of defense the Browns are going to play, and the Browns are pretty familiar with what kind of offense the Bills are going to play, so it leads to some interesting sidebars into this weekend's game.
That's right. It's like a big swirling whirlwind of emotions going on around this game, and a lot with the Mike Pettin having such a good year. Just 1 year with the Bills last year was good enough to get him the Browns job. So, and the amazing thing is, they had the Bills had the 10th best defense in the league last year, again, propelling Pettin to getting this job. But this year, they're even better under Jim Schwartz. They're the 4th best defense in the league. So, they really got a lot of, and that is actually without Kiko Alonso. They've been without him the entire year. And again, if you told me at the beginning of the year that they would lose C.J. Spiller, they would not have Alonso for the entire year, and they would, bench E.J. Manuel, I would be like, I wouldn't expect the Bills to be anywhere near contention. I expect them to be at the bottom of the barrel. But no, this is a playoff implication game for both teams. It's really astonishing.
You brought up Manuel, too. Just a quick aside from we talk about the narrative with the quarterbacks here in Cleveland that dominated things for a while. I think that's kind of an example of how things can go wrong quickly with a young quarterback. I mean, obviously RG3 is another one too, seeing that situation there. But for people that say, "I'll just throw the guy out there," whether you want, let's say Manziel, just you put the guy out there, you start moving with the future right away. I think that people very quickly ignore the bad sides of that, and you're seeing that here with some of these situations. When a guy like RG3, to me, as much as you want to stand in front of the media and say, "Oh, he's still our guy, we still believe in him," come on, no. You don't bench your guy again. Now it's different when you can hide behind the injuries, when you can use that, because that's like at least semi-legitimate reasons to hold the guy back. But when you blatantly bench the guy this late into the experiment, I don't know how you can look and say, real quickly on that, how can they look and say, "Oh, he's still our guy"? I mean, you just benched your franchise guy who you traded a truckload of assets for a guy who is in many circles considered a cast-off, or a guy who hasn't caught on, and he had what happened here in Cleveland, and then he's just kind of he's worked his way back. But regardless, not a guy that people were jumping up and down at the beginning of the season and saying, "Hey, this guy should be playing instead of this guy," but he is. So how can you look at your fan base and say this is still our guy? You got to think RG3's days are done in Washington. They're just trying to maintain some kind of asset value, I think, for something in the future, because I can't see how you go back to him again. You've already done that and been there.
Right. It's amazing how far his stock has fallen. And I think everybody really got spoiled, not just with Andrew Luck, but with Russell Wilson to have, such great success right off the bat as a quarterback. And people think, oh, yeah, well, Teddy Bridgewater can do it or Blake Bortles can do it. It's like, no, that was really an anomaly for somebody like Andrew Luck to come right in and take his team to playoff contention. It just can't be done. And that's why I know people are always champing at the bit to get Johnny Football in there, but really the best place for Johnny Football right now is on the sidelines learning. And I think one of the best things that's happened to the Browns all year is not just that Hoyer has done well, but just that he stayed healthy to the point where we didn't have to throw Manziel in there until he was ready. And, the results are there with the Browns being 7-4.
Right, and then looking at the Bills going back there, same thing here. You've seen the back and forth attempts to step forward with A.J. Manuel, and oh no, I highly disagree there, Bruce. I don't want anything to do with RG3. Bruce in the chat room said he would take him over Hoyer over Manziel, and Manziel can be whatever it is. And even if you want to be not the greatest Hoyer guy, I'm not an RG. I wasn't an RG3 guy when he came out, though. For everybody that wants to say about this dual threat, I'm just saying, Kendall Lewis, a lot of you guys sometimes disagree with the things that he tweets, or you get angry at his stance on certain things. I hear from you guys, and some of you agree with him, and some of you don't. But he said something the other day, and I was like, you know what? He's right on with that. They break them eventually, all of them. And by them, I mean the running quarterbacks. As he said to me, and this is Kendall's words, to him, the best of all of them was Randall Cunningham back in the day, who kind of really took that to another level, if you remember, with those Eagles teams. And they broke him, too. They broke him, too. You can run, and you can run, and you can run for a long time. Steve Young was one of the great dual threat. To me, he was truly a great dual threat quarterback because his true threat was his arm, but he could nail you with his legs. But he did not just run to run, although sometimes he was a little quick to do it. But regardless, they broke him too with the concussions. What I'm saying is, when you constantly put yourself in the line of fire, you eventually take a bullet. That was always my thought, even if Johnny Manziel's skill set played out the way it did. And we're not even talking about Manziel, it's just bringing up this running quarterback thing here. And that's my thought with that. And it was that thought with RG3. And then when he went down with such a serious injury at the beginning, I know you can come back. We watched Hoyer do it. We watched a lot of guys do it. But, man, Hoyer's not a running quarterback. So he can come back from an ACL and not change his style very much. You cannot destroy your entire leg like that and have it not affect you when you make your living with the lower half of your body, which was what those guys do.
That's a very good point, because look at how fragile even running backs are these days. Big, tough guys, 200, 220 pounds, they rarely last beyond the age of 30, and that's, their job. So imagine how much more fragile a quarterback is going to be when he gets out there and tries to run. Just how big and strong and fast the defenders are these days. It's like anybody who tries to run is eventually going to become an endangered species.
Like, I definitely, although I can understand it, because we saw, what happened with Chud here last year, as far as a coach getting rammed through in one season and ran out, and we know that does happen, where many people preach patience. So I can see why the Bills made the move that they made, because they're trying to win, they're trying to compete, but that's so awkward. Like, I was a little like, wow, they pulled the rug out from underneath dude pretty quickly there, because they want to try to make this playoff spot. They want to try to compete, because these coaches don't know if they're going to be here when the guy that they're developing through a 4-win season finally develops. So we're seeing a bit of that thought process there. And now you got Kyle Orton. I joke, I always call him the neckbeard, but I've never been a Kyle Orton guy, but he's done a good job so far since he's gotten the controls of this Buffalo offense.
That's right. He's been surprisingly effective, even though he hasn't really been, necessarily setting the world on fire. He's got a 96 pass rating instead of 80 for Manuel, and he's thrown 12 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions. So, basically they're trying to get him out there to pretty much not lose the game. And he's got some really good, very young receivers, Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods. I think those two are going to be really great over the next few years if they can just keep those two healthy and those two together. It's really funny. We look at Sammy Watkins and we think about what might have been, about, wow, maybe the Browns should have, picked him. And, he's having a good year. He's their leading receiver with 48 catches. But it's funny, out in Buffalo, they're like, gee, we traded next year's number 1 pick just to move up and get Sammy Watkins. And, he's done fine and all, but gee, look who else we could have gotten. There was Mike Evans in the first round. There was, Odell Beckham Jr. in the first round. Like, we maybe paid a little bit, too much to make sure we got Sammy Watkins when there were all these great receivers. So people are kind of a little, not really down on Watkins, but a little bit down on the exact way that they got him. And it's not looking forward to the Browns having their number 1 pick next year.
Well, yeah, and Watkins talked about that during the conference call this week. Of course, there's the pressure that comes with that, too, because the team went up and got you. And he really thought, as did many people, he really thought that Cleveland was one of the couple of teams that he would have ended up going to. And, I really believe that that was what was going to happen until the Bills called up Ray Farmer and said, hey, we got this first-round draft pick. And at that point, the general manager inside Ray Farmer just couldn't resist the lure of that first-round draft pick, man. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to do that deal there, and I can move some guys around on my board. And it leads a situation where we've got 2 first-round draft picks who have not really contributed much to the Browns here this season. But there's plenty of time for that to play itself out. Gilbert and Manziel, of course, 2 different stories there. I'll tell you what, though. And you can say it's hindsight, but everybody uses hindsight in the bad way. I'm going to go the opposite way of Vashawn over there in the chat room. I think that the fact that the Browns receivers did what they did this season, I mean, maybe you can say the Browns got lucky, but that was their plan. So if by their plan working out, they got lucky, then I guess you could say that. But regardless, they decided we're going to go with these guys until we get Gordon back, and we think that they'll be able to right the ship. Plus, we don't plan on being a high usage passing offense. We intend on running the rock a whole lot, so we think we can deal with what we got. And those guys have definitely done what they needed to do. I like Sammy Watkins, brother. I think he's going to be a great receiver, but this season has shown the ups and downs that come with drafting a high pick wide receiver as well, because you'll have your couple of games where you have the big numbers and you have one big catch that jacks that total up, but you'll have your games where you catch 2 for 20 or 3 for 30 or whatever. I mean, that's the nature of the game. I like Sammy Watkins, and I sit there and I go, man, him and Josh Gordon on the same field at the same time would have been interesting to see. And I liked Mike Evans a lot too. He was definitely my, if we don't take Sammy Watkins, I'd like to take this guy. But going back to what you were saying, he feels the pressure of not only being taken that high, but having the first round pick traded for him as well. And that first round pick and how his career and who the Browns take next year will always be compared through Sammy's career, as far as he'll be compared to not only the other wide receivers in that draft, but as you said, in Buffalo, he will now be compared to whomever the Browns take with the Bills pick in next year's draft. So that's always an interesting, sticky type situation for a guy to go through as well. But, that is what it is. He's going to be on the opposite side of the field, perhaps at times in this game, with the guy that the Browns took with the other side of that pick, which was Justin Gilbert. And speaking of Watkins, and that you got Robert Woods, they've got some offense over there on Buffalo, and the defensive backfield for the Browns, I think, is playing at their best level all season. I thought they really did a good job with the weapons they worked against last week, because that's the one thing Atlanta does have, is a quarterback that can get the ball to some dangerous wide receivers. And I thought they did a relatively good job, and I think they're at their best part so far this season. So they're going to need to be, because, as we said, Orton's gotten going a little bit here, and he's able to find those guys. Woods has really been emerging there as a guy, and they've got Chandler at tight end, so they've got some weapons there on offense.
That's right. It just seems like one big challenge after another. It seems like every week we're like, well, Joe Hayden and the guys are going to have to deal with these receivers and these other tough receivers. There's just a lot of them all throughout the NFL. And I think, Joe Hayden, he had a little bit of a hard time in the first half of the season. I'm really not sure why, but he's really put it back together. He's been, taking on one tough receiver after another, like Julio Jones. And again, it's going to probably be him against Watkins most of the way this week, and he's done very, very well. And I think, we talk all about the about the Bills, having a really strong defense, and we'll talk a little more about them in a second, but I think this is a situation where the Browns have a chance to really do a great job on defense this weekend, because I think that aside from Watkins, there's not a whole lot of guys on this Bills offense that really scare me. And if you look at, how they've done,